What if Donald Trump woke up in the Middle Ages? No towers, no Twitter, no golf courses, just mud, chickens, and a village full of people who have no idea who he is. This isn't a parody, it's a bedtime story, a relaxing, absurd, completely unnecessary epic. So get comfortable, take a deep breath, and watch what happens when one man's ego travels back 700 years in time. Oh, and if you want to mess with that one annoying friend of yours, share this video with them, but share it now, because no one deserves to stay awake alone. And let us know in the comments if you managed to keep someone else awake with you. It was a grey, soggy, absolutely miserable morning. The kind that feels like it was designed by someone emotionally unstable with access to the weather controls. In the heart of a forgotten village, abandoned by God, history, and possibly also soap, lay a crooked pile of hay. And on top of it, like a badly placed jewel in a mud ring, Donald Trump opened his eyes. He didn't just wake up, he emerged, like a misunderstood prophecy written by a blind man during a windstorm. His body was wrapped in what could only be described as burlap sadness, a sack tied at the waist with rope, as if someone had tried to wrap a gift they hated. But nothing, absolutely nothing, stood out more than the thing still sitting proudly on top of his head. The hair. This wasn't hair. It was a belief system, a monument, a defiant sculpture standing tall against time, gravity, and common sense. Even after a night spent face down in hay, sweat, and regret, the golden wave hadn't moved an inch. It hovered just above his scalp, radiating misplaced confidence. It seemed to whisper, "Everything else has collapsed, but I remain." Trump blinked slowly, adjusted his posture, which had clearly been offended by the straw mattress, and muttered, "Who turned off the AC?" There was no AC, no coffee, no Wi-Fi. Just the gentle sound of a pig coughing in the distance and the sharp ring of a church bell, announcing, optimistically, that another glorious disaster of a day had begun. He stood up, not with grace, but with the determination of someone refusing to believe this was real. His feet sank into the cold medieval mud with a wet squelch that screamed, "You're not in a boardroom anymore." Trump looked around, trying to make sense of what he was seeing. Wooden houses tilted in protest, chimneys belching smoke like anxious volcanoes, chickens strutting around like they ran the place, and then the cold. A cold so aggressive it felt like it had a personal grudge. He crossed his arms, shivered, and growled, "This is sabotage. This is climate interference. Where's the Paris Agreement when you need it?" A peasant walked by, pushing a cart full of frozen cabbage. He gave Trump a brief, squinty glance, the kind of look reserved for mouldy bread and moral confusion. "You there," Trump called. "Where's the nearest spa, preferably with heated floors and sea salt scrubs?" The man said nothing. He just spat on the ground and kept pushing his cabbage like it owed him money. Trump shook his head. "People are so ungrateful. I've built towers. I've written books. I've reshaped reality, sometimes without even trying. And now I'm barefoot, wrapped in poverty, and ignored by vegetable Gandalf." He marched forward, determined to find someone, anyone, with the intelligence to recognize greatness. That's when he stopped in front of a crooked building with a sign hand-scribbled in charcoal. "The Witch's Ear, Tavern and Other Regrets." He sighed, pulled his makeshift rope belt a little tighter, squared his shoulders and muttered, "If this is a nightmare, it better have wine." And with that, he pushed open the door. The tavern door creaked open with the kind of sound you'd expect from a pessimistic cat being stepped on. Trump pushed it gently, expecting some basic level of welcome, maybe polite applause, or at least warm lighting. Instead, he was greeted by three things: a cloud of smoke dense enough to qualify as a religion, a smell that suggested soup, but in a negative way, and a sound coming from the corner that might have been someone coughing up their last happy memory. The floor was coated with straw, breadcrumbs, and what he assumed were the charred remains of optimism. The air inside tasted like wood ash and garlic regret. Trump stepped forward. His feet slipped a little, but he recovered with the balance of someone who's tripped on worse, like facts. Straight ahead, behind the bar, a woman wiped a cracked mug with a cloth that looked like it had fought in several wars and lost all of them. She looked up, paused for a solid 3 seconds. It wasn't surprise, it wasn't curiosity, it was more like existential disappointment. "Good day, madam," Trump said, with the practiced tone of a man ordering champagne on a crashing airplane. I'll have a cappuccino with almond milk, and if you have any warm Belgian croissants, that'd be tremendous." The woman stared. Then, slowly, with the deadpan efficiency of someone processing absurdity on a daily basis, she pushed a steaming bowl toward him. The contents were somewhere between soup, threat, and hallucination. Trump leaned in, sniffed, regretted it instantly. "What is this? Soup? Or the liquid form of a medieval accident?" No one answered. From the far corner of the tavern, a group of locals played dice, or possibly just threw rocks and pretended they had rules. One of them had 2 teeth and a laugh that sounded like a goose being mugged. Upon seeing Trump, one muttered, "Look, the new prophet of misplaced confidence." Everyone chuckled. Trump didn't. He dragged a stool closer, the stool groaned in protest, and sat down with the posture of someone trying to manifest a throne through willpower alone. "I need allies, a foundation, a base of operations. Kingdoms aren't built overnight, except when I build them, which I do, frequently." Just then, a skinny girl appeared beside him, holding a basket of eggs and looking like she'd seen it all, and wasn't impressed by any of it. "You the new guy working for the blacksmith?" "I am. Donald Trump." She nodded slowly, the way you might nod at a man who just claimed to be a wizard. "Right, you'll be carrying horseshoes today, and scrubbing hooves with vinegar and rat cloth." "Excuse me? I'm the man who reshaped economies, sold books no one read, and created confusion so profitable it had a brand." "Cool. Well, the vinegar's in the bucket." She placed an egg on the table in front of him and left without further ceremony. Trump stared at the egg, then at the soup, then at the far wall, where a child licked a spoon as if it owed him something, and a cat napped on a barrel that was also napping. "Okay, new strategy. I need to inspire. I need to dominate. I need to perform." He stood up, bumped his head on a beam, pretended it was intentional, then stormed out of the tavern, pushed through the cold like a man walking into history, and raised his voice to the village. "Attention, peasants! Your saviour has arrived. The light, the future, in human form." There was silence. Then someone shouted, "Ain't you the guy who fell in the pigsty yesterday?" "Fake news!" another yelled, "and tried to pay for bread with a leaf?" "That was economic innovation," and one more, and asked where the inn's elevator was. "Forward-thinking infrastructure planning." Trump inhaled deeply, adjusted his robe, raised his chin. "They don't understand yet, but they will. They always do, eventually." And with that, he walked on, into destiny, or at least into a puddle. After being ignored, half insulted and nearly hit by what might have been an angry carrot, Trump made a decision. He would form a government. "I can't just sit around waiting for these peasants to recognize brilliance. I need action, structure, maybe a flag." He marched toward the village forge where a large man, shirtless, sooty, and clearly not in the mood, was hammering iron as if it had personally insulted his ancestors. "You, blacksmith, you're hired." The man looked up. His face said, "I've seen worse." His eyes said, "Barely." "Hired for what?" "You're my new head of security. You're big, intimidating, probably emotionally unavailable. Perfect." "What's the pay?" "Visibility, brand exposure, symbolic authority." "Any bread?" "There's potential." "Good enough. I like hitting things anyway." That's the spirit. A few steps later, Trump spotted a scrawny boy struggling to carry a bucket of water. The kind of struggle that made it look like the bucket was winning. "You there? What's your name?" "Kako." "Excellent. You're now my royal messenger. But I'm deaf." "Even better. You'll be immune to criticism." Kako smiled, nodded, and immediately ran off in the wrong direction. Finally, Trump approached an old woman selling jars of tea, twisted roots, and feathers that looked like they'd been plucked during emotional trauma. "You appear wise. I appoint you chief mystical advisor. I sell laxatives." "Wonderful. You'll lead our purification initiatives. Also clears out demons and memories." "Perfect. Public health policy." And just like that, Trump had a team. A grumpy blacksmith with unresolved anger, a deaf child with a strong sense of directionlessness, and a laxative dealer with shamanic overtones. This is it. The foundation of a new era. I shall call it Trumpsburg, or perhaps North Pustule. He gathered them all in the town square, climbed onto a wobbly barrel, raised his arms, and began the speech he had clearly rehearsed inside his own head. "Citizens, today marks the rebirth of this village, a new order, a new system, a new brand. Nothing. A single cow mooed, possibly sarcastically. You've lived too long in confusion, mud, and purposelessness, but not anymore. Now you will have leadership, and more importantly, a currency. He held up a clumsy clay coin, roughly circular, slightly cracked, with his face carved into it like a warning. Behold, the Trumpen, worth more than onions, more than soup, more than doubt. Someone in the crowd shouted, "Can I trade it for bread?" Not yet, but have faith. When confidence grows, bread follows. A beat flew through the air. It missed. Barely. They're still processing the greatness. It's normal. Back inside the tavern, Trump sketched the official emblem of his new administration. A golden wig over a chicken, flanked by 2 question marks and the word visionaire in made-up Latin. "Everything's going according to plan," he whispered. "I've conquered worse places, like meetings and press conferences." Nearby, Kako recited a speech filled with random words. The blacksmith hit metal just for fun. The laxative lady brewed tea that smelled like boiled ambition. "Tomorrow," Trump said, eyes gleaming, "we begin construction of the wall." The inside of the fortune-teller's hut looked like someone had tried to recreate a mystical atmosphere, based solely on overheard rumours and poor lighting. Patchy curtains hung sideways over the windows. A cracked crystal ball trembled atop a table that clearly had performance anxiety. And there were so many candles burning that the heat inside could have melted gold, or more importantly, Trump's hair, which was a real concern. At the centre of the room, seated on what may once have been a cushion or a former loaf of bread, sat the fortune-teller, a middle-aged woman with wild hair, too many necklaces, and a look that screamed both ancient wisdom and deep regret. She looked up slowly, like someone waking up from a trance or a nap they didn't enjoy. "You've come seeking answers," Trump raised an eyebrow. "Yes, exactly. How did you know?" "Everyone who walks in here is either lost or has worms." "You look lost." "I'm Donald Trump." "Is that the name of a disease or a new sword?" "It's the name of a legacy, a dynasty, a golden monument to success, style, and you're wearing a rope. It's temporary, fashion cycles." The fortune-teller extended her hands over the crystal ball and began murmuring words in a language that might have been Latin, or just the ingredients to a bad soup. The ball flickered, then fizzled, then made a sound like plop. "Ah, I see something," Trump leaned in. "I see. A man, orange of hue, with a grand destiny. Yes, go on. I see him, chased by demonic chickens, riding a wheelless cart, trying to sell magic mirrors to a king with no face." Trump froze. "That sounds like a low-budget nightmare. The visions do not lie. Are you sure this isn't just dehydration?" She ignored him. She pulled a card from a worn deck and flipped it over. It showed a man screaming while being slapped by a flying fish. "This card reveals your future." "My future involves fish now?" "Yes, and a talking sheep. But also influence. Many will follow you. Now we're talking." "Directly into the abyss." Trump leaned back, unimpressed. "These predictions are worse than poll numbers," the fortune-teller smirked. "You're here for a reason, Donald of the Straw. Something greater than yourself, or your vanity. That's a short list. You must face 3 trials. I'm already facing one, this soup. The second is the trial of the corncob. I beg your pardon. And the third, you'll discover when you're ready." Trump sighed. "Do you at least have a map, a plan, a brochure?" "I have nettle tea." "Close enough." She poured it into a chipped mug. He took a sip and nearly burst into flames. For the first time in years, his hair flinched. Trump stood, adjusted his rope belt, nodded stiffly and walked out, trying to maintain dignity while his taste buds filed a formal complaint. Outside, the sky was still grey, the crows still screeched, and the mud remained the village's main export. Trump paused, looked around and muttered, "Okay, if I'm going to conquer this place, I'll need a plan, a team, and a shoe." Trump walked through the village with purpose, the kind of purpose usually seen in people who have no idea where they're going, but walk fast enough to make it look intentional. The mud reached his ankles, the road was more like a suggestion, and the wind slapped his face like a bitter ex-employee. Rule number 1 for success: surround yourself with mediocre people who make you look brilliant. It never fails. He stopped in front of the blacksmith, a burly man covered in soot, hammering a lump of metal like it owed him rent. "You," Blacksmith, you're hired, the man paused mid-swing. For what? Chief of Security, you're big, angry, and incapable of smiling. That's leadership material. What's the pay? Visibility. What? Recognition, influence, proximity to power. And bread? Also, possibly. We'll talk. The blacksmith shrugged. Fine, as long as I can keep hammering things. I like hammering. You're a man of vision. Next, Trump spotted a boy dragging a bucket of water with the kind of struggle usually reserved for mythical quests. You, name, Kako. Great, you're now my royal messenger. I'm deaf. Even better, you'll ignore all criticism. Positive mindset. You'll go far, kid. Kako smiled and ran in the opposite direction. Then he found an older woman selling roots, suspicious vials and feathers from birds who clearly hadn't given consent. You seem experienced. I'm appointing you my mystical advisor. I sell natural laxatives. Even better, you'll be in charge of population control. And just like that, within an hour, Trump had assembled his inner circle, an antisocial blacksmith with unresolved rage, a deaf messenger with poor navigation, and a laxative vendor with murder in her tea. It's the beginning of an empire, Trump said, admiring his crew like a man who had no access to better options. He climbed onto a makeshift platform, a pile of dried fish crates, and addressed the village with his arms raised and voice full of unwarranted grandeur. Attention, people of Pustule. As of today, you are part of something greater, a new administration, a new era, and of course, a new tax. Murmurs echoed through the square. Someone shouted, Are you going to protect us from bandits? Absolutely, provided you contribute to the security fund. Minimum 3 cabbages per household. Another yelled, Do you know how to farm? I planted the idea of success. Now I'm harvesting. Followers. An old woman threw a soggy carrot. She missed. Barely. Trump brushed off his robe with disdain. They don't understand. At first no one does, but later they kneel. Behind him the blacksmith grunted. He talks weird, but he's better than the bishop. Kako shouted something unintelligible from a tree. The laxative lady handed out tea to confused bystanders. It's a start, Trump said. Now all we need is to conquer the neighbouring villages, found a bank and launch a currency. What'll it be called? Asked the blacksmith. The Trump hen. It's worth more than gold, or at least more than a dried onion. The next morning, Trump woke up with the sun punching him in the face and the scent of old cheese creeping into his dreams like a passive-aggressive ghost. He stretched inside what he had declared the official presidential residence, which was actually just a tent made of cowhide, 2 sticks, and someone's missing curtain. Today's the day, he murmured, his voice dry and cracked. The empire begins to grow. He opened a map that had been hand-scribbled in charcoal by the deaf boy, who it turns out was also dyslexic. Still, Trump gathered his elite team in the centre of the village, next to a suspicious waterhole that some called a fountain and others called the frog bath. Team, today we expand, one village at a time, using diplomacy, charisma, and of course, unfulfilled promises. And if they say no, asked the blacksmith, then we apply the ancient art of confusion and distraction. Magic, marketing. Mission, conquer Fungotropolis. Located about a half-hour walk away, or 2 hours if your shoes were made of wet straw, Fungotropolis was known for 2 things, mushrooms and unexplained group dancing. Trump led the march. He wore a red cape, technically a tablecloth, followed by the blacksmith with a hammer, Kako banging a pot for morale, and the laxative lady blowing mist through a bone pipe for ambience. Upon arrival, they were greeted by villagers with mossy beards and pupils dilated from questionable teas. Trump raised his arms dramatically. People of Fungotropolis, I bring opportunity, growth, and a brand new cabbage tax. One of the villagers squinted. Who are you? Donald Trump, visionary, businessman, prophet, master of scalable ideas. Do you have bread? Number. But I offer something better. A franchise. The crowd blinked slowly. A man with mushrooms growing from his shoulder asked, What's a franchise? A magical thing where I make money, and you do most of the work. There was muttering, spitting into buckets. A small child screamed, The king has no pants, Trump pressed forward. I offer you reform, torchlighting, an annual festival with door prizes, and this, the Trumpin, our new official currency. He held up a clay coin with his face carved into it by a nervous rat. A pause, then from the back. Can we trade it for chickens? Not yet. But one day, it'll buy 3 onions. Suddenly thunder cracked in the distance. The laxative lady looked up. Time to go. The gods are laughing. Or aiming. Rain began to fall. Trump raised his arms. Tactical retreat. Let's regroup and rebrand. They sprinted back to Pustule. Trump slipped 3 times. Kako got stuck in a mushroom pile. The blacksmith carried him out like a bag of potatoes. Back home, Trump sat beneath a crooked tree drenched, holding his cracked clay coin. Okay, maybe it's not time to expand. Maybe we reinforce the core. The blacksmith nodded. We can use wood or fear. Both. The best leaders mix charm with chaos. Kako banged his pot triumphantly. The laxative lady offered calming tea to a goat. Tomorrow, Trump declared, we start building the wall. A wall to protect us from ideas. What'll we call it? Asked the blacksmith. The Wall of Truth, or maybe the Wall of Uncertainty. I'll decide later. The next morning, Trump appeared in the village square dressed in what he proudly called his royal uniform. It was a potato sack, dyed yellow, cinched with a shoelace. On his head, a cone-shaped hat made from a scroll he didn't read. People of Pustule, he shouted, today marks the beginning of something monumental, the construction of the Wall of Confusion. Silence, except for a donkey chewing on someone's laundry. Trump pointed toward the edge of the village, where several bundles of sticks, mud, and general disappointment had been gathered. This wall will protect us from dangerous ideas, wandering thoughts, and if we build it tall enough, maybe even wind. The blacksmith stepped forward, hammer in hand. So, we're using bricks, stone, wood, mud, and belief. Belief doesn't hold up in the rain. Then we'll double the mud. And so it began. With bare hands, fake enthusiasm, and total lack of planning. Villagers stacked twigs like they were in a competition to disappoint architects. Kako tried to line up logs in alphabetical order. The laxative lady offered energy tea, which made several people dizzy and emotional. At the end of the first day, they had a wall. Well, a suggestion of a wall. It leaned, it whimpered, and one section faced inward for no apparent reason. This is visionary, Trump said, standing proudly in front of it. A wall doesn't need to be perfect. It just needs to exist and confuse people. Whispers of rebellion begin. By dusk, the villagers gathered near the tavern, faces tired, souls heavier than soup. Why are we building a wall? Asked a woman, holding a twig with a sigh. I thought it was for defense. Against what? Thoughts? He tried to make me sign a loyalty cabbage, murmured one man. Posters appeared the next day. Less mud, more bread. Soup, not speeches. Kako for leader. Trump watched them go up and smiled. They're finally engaging. That's what good leadership does. It activates people. Sometimes into protest. That's fine. The blacksmith leaned in quietly. They're planning something. Perfect. That means I'm important. Number it means they might throw more vegetables. Then we're officially in a democracy. The first protest. By afternoon, the villagers gathered. Some held signs, some held turnips. A woman stepped forward. We demand the old village council back. We demand an end to confusing speeches. We demand flavour in the soup. Trump stood atop a crate arms wide. This is beautiful. The people are speaking, which means they're listening. We're not listening, someone shouted. Exactly, you're engaging. That's not what that means. A turnip flew through the air. This time, it hit him. Trump froze, touched his shoulder, looked down at the vegetable like it was a betrayal. I see. Resistance. He stepped off the crate. Then we moved to phase 2. Which is, asked the blacksmith, control the narrative. By dawn, the air in Pustule felt different. It wasn't just the fog or the faint smell of boiled cabbage and passive aggression. It was tension. Real tension. Villagers walked faster, whispered more. Chickens were locked indoors. Even the goats were unusually private. In the town square, Trump stood before his now leaning wall of confusion, hands on hips, proudly surveying what was essentially a stack of damp firewood held together with faith and regret. No more waiting. It's time to restore order, and most importantly, respect. He pulled on his crumpled red cape, adjusted the crown, made from a broken bucket, and summoned his elite squad. The blacksmith with the look of someone 2 sighs away from quitting the laxative lady, holding herbal tea in silent judgment, and Kako proudly waving a sign upside down that read, Glory. New decree, Trump announced. We will now implement sweeping reforms. I call it the package of authority. What's in it? Asked the blacksmith. First, curfew. Everyone indoors by sunset. The sun sets at 4. Perfect. Leaves more time for introspection. And if they don't obey, we send Kako. He can't hear, but he's persistent. Trump's new policies: a mandatory smiling law, 3 smiles per day per citizen, a fine of 1 onion for visible frowns, 2 onions and a motivational lecture for sarcastic grins. And we now have a Ministry of Mood. You're all enrolled, he added. Villagers began to murmur. The blacksmith quietly crafted a very small hammer, just in case. Behind the tavern, a secret gathering formed. He wants to rename the well Minister of Agriculture. He said we'll privatize the rain, and the goat is now Chief of Logistics. If this keeps up, we'll be paying tax in soup fumes. The resistance organizes. The plan was improvised. Step 1, make protest signs. Step 2, march with purpose. Step 3, demand his resignation, or at least a better soup recipe. They gathered with 2 torches, a few damp banners, and 1 inspirational potato carved into the shape of a question mark. Trump stood tall on his usual barrel-turned podium. My people, you've gathered to honour me, I see. No, we want you gone. Gone where? On vacation? I could use a spa. We mean resign. Ah, you meant to design. I'll consider rebranding my robe. The crowd groaned. Someone threw a wilted turnip. This time, it hit. They're revolting, the blacksmith whispered. Of course they are, Trump replied, brushing off the turnip. That's how you know they care. The laxative lady sighed. Kako danced in the background, unaware of the riot he had inspired. This is just the beginning, Trump said to no one in particular. All great movements face resistance. This is my revolution. A second turnip hit. He flinched. Okay, maybe it's time for tea. Trump sat in his royal chamber, technically a pigsty with dreams, holding his cracked clay coin like it was a symbol of empire, not pottery-class failure. Outside, the air rumbled. Not with thunder, with cookware. Pans, spoons, and loud feet stomping in rhythm. The kind of peasant percussion that meant something was about to break, emotionally or architecturally. They're not revolting, Trump whispered to himself. They're passionate. It's applause in disguise. Outside, a crowd gathered. Signs in shaky charcoal handwriting waved through the mist. End the soup lies. More bread, less bragging. We miss when things were just bad. At the front, the laxative lady. Beside her, Kako with a frying pan as a megaphone, and the blacksmith sharpening a tool with the calm of someone preparing for either justice or carpentry. Trump climbs the barrel one last time. He steps out, arms wide, eyes blazing with confidence no one else shared. Citizens, you're here today to celebrate my leadership. Beautiful. We're here to kick you out, someone shouted. A kick of love. I feel it. A turnip landed nearby. Missed again, he muttered. You made a chicken minister of defence, someone yelled. Strategic. They see from both sides. You taxed laughter. It was becoming chaotic. The blacksmith walked up and placed a hand on Trump's shoulder. You need to leave. Now. This isn't failure. This is transformation. Call it what you want. The villagers call it, go now. Trump looked around. The wall had collapsed. His coin was chipped. The soup was cold. But his pride, still piping hot. The peaceful exile. The villagers didn't throw stones. They didn't set fire to anything. They simply formed a path and stood silently, judging. Trump walked through, chin high, cape dragging, dignity trailing behind like a loose sock. The laxative lady handed him a small bag, some bread, and a map to anywhere but here. You'll miss me, he said, stepping past the blacksmith. Already started, he replied. You'll call me when the soup fails. We'll eat raw onions first, exit monologue. On the road again, mud, cold wind, and a goat staring at him with mild contempt. Trump held his cracked coin high. This isn't over, it's just chapter 1. He tripped on a root, fell face first into a bush, got up, dusted off his pride again. They'll come back. They always do. When the ideas dry up and the soup runs out, they'll want me back. A bird pooped on his shoulder. Even nature recognizes greatness. And with that he marched toward the horizon, the cape flapping, the dream alive, and a turnip still stuck to his boot. The path outside the village was muddy, lonely, and deeply uninvested in Trump's legacy. He walked slowly, dragging a sack with half a loaf of stale bread, a cracked coin, and what dignity hadn't yet dissolved in turnip juice. "They'll regret it," he muttered. "Great leaders are always rejected before being worshipped. Look at me." The wind howled in disagreement. His cape flapped like a wounded curtain, his boots squelched, and from the trees even the squirrels seemed sceptical. Accidents begin. Again. Out of nowhere, a rogue cart came barreling down a hill. No horse, no driver, just a chicken clinging to the reins and screaming. "Out of the way!" The chicken did not say, but its eyes implied it. Trump sidestepped, almost. He was struck by a wheel, a basket of leeks and an empty vinegar barrel that insulted him on impact. "I've been attacked by journalists with worse breath," he growled, standing up. A rock rolled out from under his foot. He fell backward into a puddle, face first, twice. It's okay. Every hero's journey has mud. It's symbolic. Then without warning, a bird dropped something on his shoulder. Again. Nature keeps writing bad reviews. Hallucination or vision? Hard to tell. That night he camped under a tree that bent away from him. He dreamed, or imagined, or invented, a throne made of soup bowls, a choir of cows singing Great Again, a glowing crown descending from the heavens, only to land on a turnip. "The universe is guiding me," he whispered in his sleep. A raccoon watched from a bush, unimpressed. A new village appears. By morning, Trump stood on a hill, frost on his hair, which somehow still held shape, and stared into the distance. Down in the valley, a village, bright flags, smoke from chimneys, no clue who he was. A sign at the edge read, "Welcome to Sansuor, the village no one visits twice." Trump smiled. Perfect. They're fresh, unspoiled, uninformed, and clearly ready for me. He fixed his cape, popped his cracked coin in his pocket, and stepped forward. He slipped on a wet stone, fell flat, again, got up with flair. That was for momentum, and marched toward his next chapter. The first thing Trump noticed upon entering Sansuor was the silence. Not peaceful silence, coordinated silence. The houses were small, tilted, but unnaturally clean. The windows had matching curtains. Even the chickens walked in straight lines. "Suspicious," Trump muttered. "Cleanliness and silence. That usually means cult or very expensive real estate." In the centre of the village stood a man, tall, pale, dressed in white robes, holding a cloth. He turned slowly and smiled, the kind of smile that meant absolutely nothing and everything all at once. "Welcome. I am Eustachio, coordinator of breathing and emotional hygiene. You're what now?" "We manage the community's inner rhythm. Sounds like a therapy podcast. We prefer to call it structured emotional purity," Trump squinted. "So, it's a cult?" "We don't use that word." "Then it is." Before he could respond, a woman appeared out of nowhere like she'd been trained in stealth by fog. "Has the visitor undergone the entry cleansing?" "I'm damp," Trump replied. "From the rain. That counts." She didn't blink. She raised a bucket and threw warm water on him, scented with herbs and judgment. That's illegal in most countries. "Here, it's foreplay." Trump stood dripping in the square. "Okay, I need a plan. Fast. Something subtle, quiet, a slow infiltration." He looked around. Everyone was walking at the same pace, waving in the same way, smiling with the same number of teeth. "I've landed in Ant Colony, the village." He paused at a small shop. The sign read, "Approved emotions in jars." "Oh, I can definitely run this place." First attempt at integration, Trump walked toward a group sitting in a circle, eyes closed, holding identical cups of tea. "May I join you?" "Only if you've completed the course in ego surrender and silence alignment," a woman said with a fixed smile. "I teach that course." Arrogance detected. That's confidence with stats. They turned back inward. A bee buzzed nearby. Everyone applauded politely. "Okay, Phase 1, blending in. Phase 2, promotion. Phase 3, empire." That night he found a small empty house, sat on the haybed, exhaled deeply. From beneath the mattress a chicken emerged, eyes dead, spirit crushed like it had already lived through 3 empires and 1 failed band. "I won't disturb you," Trump said. "We're both survivors." The chicken blinked, or gave up. It was unclear. The next morning Trump emerged from his temporary headquarters, an abandoned storage shack that he had declared the executive meditation pavilion. His cape was dry, his ego wetter than ever. The village of Sansuor was already moving, in unison. People walked in synchronized steps, carried their tea at the same angle, and blinked like they had attended a breathing seminar led by a cloud. "They need structure," Trump whispered. "Controlled minds are just free ideas waiting for a logo." He approached Eustachio, polishing a stone tablet engraved with, "Silence is power. Fragrance is respect." "Eustachio, I've devised improvements, enhancements." "To what?" "Your whole vibe. It needs departments, titles, committees. We have balance. You'll have hierarchy." Eustachio stared into the distance. "Go on." "First, Department of Outer Harmony. Second, Supervisor of Long Silences. Third, Chief of Frustrated Smiles. All answer to me, of course." "This feels unnecessary. It's decorative and confusing. That's power." Soon, new signs popped up. "Welcome to the Alacrim Structured Alignment Program. Smile audits every Thursday. Emotional clarity reports due weekly." A flag was raised, beige with a wilted herb and the slogan, "We're fine." Probably. Trump held a village meeting. And now, our currency, the Alacrim coin, backed by trust, breath, and dried leaves. 1 coin equals 3 minutes of uninterrupted eye contact. "What about bread?" asked a villager. "Coming soon, after the IPO, but the cracks began to show. Meditation sessions were interrupted by whispered doubts. Why are we chanting his name? Why does tea cost 2 coins now? Did the chicken just get promoted?" Eustachio grew restless. "Visitor, your presence causes imbalance. It causes innovation. It causes indigestion." A week later, the village looked different. Posters of Trump's face appeared near the fountain. Kako, now Director of Stillness Enforcement, issued daily reminders via gong. The laxative lady sold leadership elixir that made people sit down fast and rethink everything. "I've created a system," Trump said proudly, watching villagers adjust their smiles on command. They're flourishing, quietly, grudgingly, perfectly. But that night, for the first time, no one lit candles in their windows. No one bowed. Even the chickens looked tense. A single egg was placed on Trump's doorstep, not a gift. In Sansuor, it was a sign of energetic disapproval. He stared at it. They're afraid of progress, or eggs, or maybe both. He closed the door. "Tomorrow, I raise taxes on silence." The next day, something felt off, more off than usual. Trump stepped outside wearing his ceremonial robe, a curtain, expecting the usual synchronized nods and polite bowing. Instead, people walked slower. Their smiles were tighter. Their breathing was slightly independent. "Change is in the air," Trump said proudly. "They're evolving under my influence. Wonderful." First sign of rebellion, polite sarcasm. In the village square, an elderly woman greeted him. "Alacrim bless your journey. May it be brief." Another whispered, "We hope your vision continues, at a safe distance." They're appreciating me in layers, Trump thought. How advanced. Second sign, symbolic flags. Overnight, the official Alacrim flag was replaced by a pillow, just a big hand-stitched pillow, waving gently over the tower. "Ah, the pillow," said the blacksmith, "symbol of rest and quiet resistance." Trump nodded. "Exactly. They know change is hard, but soft, like a pillow." Third sign, a silent play. That night the villagers performed a play in total silence. No script, no sound. It featured a man in a red cape spinning in circles throwing coins at uninterested sheep, followed by a giant chicken that pecked him off stage. The crowd applauded with haunting precision. Trump clapped, beaming. "Brilliant, abstract, deep. I see myself in that man." "It's based on yesterday," whispered a woman. "It's you." "Ah, live documentary, even better." Final sign, the invitation. The next morning, Eustachio arrived at Trump's door with a letter sealed in flower wax. "Donald of the Persistent Spirit, you have been chosen for the Supreme Retreat." Supreme? Yes, a silent journey, alone, to the hill of inner humility. Ah, a promotion. Let's go with that. And when do I return? When you're reborn, or when the birds say so, the farewell. As Trump left the village, walking toward the foggy hilltop, the villagers lined the streets, smiling, waving, too much. Kako cried for reasons he didn't understand. The blacksmith saluted. The chickens remained stone-faced. "Farewell, my people. I shall return enlightened." "Alakrim release you," they shouted. "Release me into greatness?" "Let's go with that." And Trump disappeared into the mist, convinced of one thing. They're going to miss me. They just don't know it yet. The hill of humility was less of a hill and more of a pile of cold, regret-shaped earth. The trees looked like they wanted to leave. Even the wind had an attitude. Trump arrived soaked, tired, and emotionally allergic to solitude. Great. My promotion includes exile. He sat on a rock. The rock rejected him. He tried again with a flatter one. Still uncomfortable, but less judgmental. It's fine. All great men have wilderness phases. I'm in my Moses moment. Night 1. Survival and poultry. He built a shelter using 3 sticks and a piece of robe he found clinging to a bush. At midnight, a chicken appeared and sat beside him. Not a friendly one. A chicken that had seen things, possibly had a past in politics. "You again?" Trump whispered. "You followed me. That's loyalty." The chicken blinked slowly, possibly in protest, possibly just cold. Day 2. Hunger and hallucination. With no food, Trump resorted to chewing leaves, bitter, chewy, regretful. This is a test, a purification. They're breaking me down, to build me back up. He began drawing in the dirt with a stick. Silence is loud when you're great. Squirrels don't applaud, but they understand. Bread is temporary, legacy is forever. He stared at the sky, and then he saw it, the vision. A throne made of pickles, a crown of goat cheese, cows circling, chanting something that sounded like Griat Again. From above, a golden light descended, and in it, himself. Wearing a glittering robe made of soup labels and compliments, he held a staff shaped like a fork. A voice boomed, "You are chosen, the shepherd of delusion, the voice of the forgotten, the symbol of loud confidence." Trump gasped, "Yes, I accept." The chicken clucked once. You heard it too, didn't you? The chicken turned, walked away, and pooped dramatically beside his boot. Symbolic. Everything symbolic now. The return. At dawn, Trump descended the hill, filthy, tired, but fueled by revelation. A new mission, a new vision. I will no longer lead, I will inspire, I will found my own civilization. He passed a deer. The deer didn't acknowledge him. That meant support. I shall call it. Trumplandia days had passed since the chicken, the vision, and the vow. Now Trump stood in the middle of an empty field, wet, cold, and filled with the kind of ambition that made squirrels run faster. This is it. Flat, unclaimed, mysterious aroma, perfect. He planted a stick in the ground, tied a piece of robe to it. This shall be the flag of Trumplandia, land of clarity, class, and unclear objectives. He drew a line in the mud with his boot. Border, international now. The Constitution of one, he declared, himself as president, prophet, and supreme sandwich consultant. The official motto, louder is better. The national anthem, whatever he felt like humming that day. And the currency, the ego coin, backed by confidence and one surviving onion. He tried to build a wall. It was 3 sticks, 2 rocks, and a hopeful stare. Phase 1 complete. First foreign policy incident. A squirrel wandered into official territory. Trump yelled, "You have entered Trumplandia airspace. Identify yourself or be sanctioned." The squirrel grabbed a crumb and fled. Uncooperative nations must be watched. Also, squirrels are very fast. The first speech, to no one. He stood on a flat rock and addressed the wind. "Citizens of Trumplandia, your leader stands before you, alone, proud, hungry, and slightly damp. We shall build a society of order, success, and daily applause," a bird chirped. He paused. That was support. The wind picked up and knocked over the flag. Not sabotage, just weather. He picked it up again, with ceremony. Existential pause. As the sun set, Trump sat by a pile of rocks that refused to become a building. He looked out at the field, the sky, the silence. Maybe I went too big, or too early, or Too alone. He considered giving up. Then a gust of wind lifted his cape dramatically. Number. That's a sign. That's cinematic. The next target. Far in the distance, across a valley, smoke curled into the sky. A new village, unaware, untouched, unready. He smiled. They won't know what hit them, but when they figure it out, they'll be grateful. He gathered his sack, his coin, his ego, and walked. Tripped, stood, walked again. Trumplandia was just the beginning. Now, I build an empire,